Greetings and welcome to our new series, which we've entitled News and Views from the Heart of Israel, looking at today's news in Israel, the events, the social life, the administration, the challenges and the joys enjoyed by those who've made their way to Zion. What I'd like to speak about first is, as ever, Israel is under huge condemnation and attack worldwide. 101 signatories today from various governments and agencies with huge demands that Israel end the war and accusations that Israel are fighting a war of attrition, or put more simply, starving the people of Gaza to death, slowly and deliberately, shooting on aid convoys, and so on. Of course, this is largely clickbait to one extent, but the truth is far from this. The amount of aid distributed, in fact, is a figure given by the UN, and the UN agency, especially drawn up to deal with Gaza. Those we know are prominent members of Hamas, most its workers, and its members even took part in the atrocities on October the 7th. So it would seem, according to a medical journal last week, that only 21% of aid is reported as being distributed by the UN, because the rest of it basically has been given to Hamas's agencies and surrogates for their distribution. In other words, they take it for themselves. So we could say that where Israel are winning the physical war, once again, I'm afraid they are losing the propaganda war. Hamas and Iran's surrogates fight a very highly developed black propaganda campaigns, tell blatant lies, misrepresent the truth. And all these nations taking this very high moral ground against Israel are actually not saying really ceasefire, not saying release aid, which Israel is not withholding. They're actually saying give Hamas the opportunity to rearm, restructure, so they can attack you again. That is the reality of what is being said. So, dear friends, please pray with me against negative propaganda, fake news, and disinformation. On the subject of warlike events, if events is the right thing to say, huge criticism again. Why are Israel attacking Syria? Well, the answer is quite straightforward, really. It's all to do with the Druze. The Druze are an indigenous people who live in the north of Israel and in the hinterlands that run into Syria, and they've lived peacefully alongside the neighbours for many, many years. Many serve in the Israeli Defence Forces as scouts and other functions. The combination of Islamists, Bedouin bandits, and supporters of the Syrian government have launched a campaign of terror not too far different from October the 7th on the Druze people. Events have been instances such as public humiliations, Druze men being captured and having their moustaches shaved off in the United States and in the UK, Canada, and other places. That might sound a little bit silly, but it's a bit like the Jewish people and the beards. It's part of their national identity, but also a sign of their religious compliance. They practice a very moderate form of Islam, but they have no revolutionary ideas. They support Israel, not anti. And the Jews actually sent an appeal to Benjamin Netanyahu last week, or maybe 10 days ago, at the time of this broadcast, saying, remember the Holocaust when there was nobody there for you. There's nobody here for us. What will you do? Benjamin Netanyahu's response was, you are not alone. And now the IDF, particularly the Air Force, have tried to clear out the enemies of the Druze. We'll say that as lumps, rather than identifying the three lots, from that hinterland and that main area. Many reports of Druze men being taken to balconies and being told to jump off, and on the way down to the death being used as target practice. This is the Bedouin bandits largely on this one, and women being raped and generally misused and abused and mutilated on occasions. So Israel coming to the rescue of the Druze and being condemned for this humanitarian action, using humanitarian in its real sense. Rescuing humanity, not breeding terrorism, not being a bleeding heart, allowing one side to be weakened while the other side strengthened. An act of mercy and compassion, even though it be by arms. So that's the news on the terrorist front. Hezbollah said this week they will not surrender their arms as part of a deal for a ceasefire or peace. Hamas, as we know, still holding hostages. At the moment, the IDF, for the first time, have entered central Gaza, being roundly condemned for it, of course. Why are they going there? They feel the remaining hostages, or the remains of the hostages, are in this area. No matter how much the UN shriek, and David Lammy, the British Foreign Minister, Emmanuel Macron, and various others scream and shout, ceasefire, stop the war, two-state solution, and all the rest of it. Leaving the two-state solution outside of that, this war needn't have gone on. For as long as it has done, there needn't have been such mass destruction if the hostages had firstly not been taken and secondly had been given back. Not nearly 2 years later, where 20 are still left, that Israel don't know whether they are dead or alive. So, my dear friends, please, please, pray for those that are still captive by Hamas. I have no doubt they've been massively ill-treated, more than likely tortured, humiliated, lied to, probably half-starved as well. But let's not imagine the suffering, let's pray for an end to it. That would be the better thing to do, wouldn't it? So, various other peace deals trying to be taking place, usually with the wrong people in the wrong places. Qatar, probably leading example of this. Another interesting thing, just by the side, while we're looking at the aggression and troubles in Israel, quite interestingly, in the areas of the Palestinian Authority, which is very unstable, as you know, and if the Palestinian Authority did take over, we'll call it Gaza, for lack of a better expression, you'd be only changing one set of villains for another, basically. However, 5 of the leading sheikhs in this area have put a suggestion forward for the Caliphate of Hebron. They, basically the big landowners, owners, and people with influence around Hebron, they're asking for an autonomous area to start with. Let's hope we didn't go any further for that, but it's interesting. So the Caliphate of Hebron, on condition, this is their condition, that they join the Abraham Accords to live and work with peace and cooperation with Israel. So that's a bit of a turn-up, isn't it, for those that have chosen to describe themselves as Palestinians. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. So as I said, that's our first news from Israel. What's going on there? So our next news is, how are the Olim getting on? Well, pretty good, by all accounts. Since October the 7th, that's nearly 2 years ago, been no cessation or stop with the flow of Olim on the way to Eretz Israel. A slight break when Iran decided to start throwing rockets at Israel and ballistic missiles and everything else. We very soon picked up again, and the IR process is healthy, alive, and doing well. However, there are always problems, as well with everything else, and we do need to pray and do encourage those that make an Olim, those that we individually have contact with, to make sure they have all the papers in good order. Now, that is one of Ezra's big jobs, making sure all the papers are in order. And it, and it varies from place to place what operation needs to be used. Now, the operation in England is very different to Ukraine, Russia, Latin America, mainland Europe, Canada, and even, I assume, in the United States. Over here, the Jewish Agency and the Beit Din in Manchester are very good, whereas in London, I would say, being generous, they're quite disruptive, particularly for those that have had documentary issues, or those who had mixed marriages. Biggest over here has been a Jewish man married a Gentile girl, but they got married in an Anglican church, Episcopalian church in American terms. And as far as the Beit Din are concerned, you've changed religion. So that's been arranged to do gear, that is to convert and reconvert. In Manchester, gear, through Ezra, where you can introduce these people there, warmly greeted, given a shortened course, and when they've done the probation, so to speak, after that, it's quite easy to go, either under Roadstein via Jewish Agency or with Israelia. Some younger people have gone with Nahal and one or two of the youth Zionist movements. So, again, the importance is one word 3 times: documents, documents, and documents. And the other thing, of course, is make sure all the people have got at least 3 sets. Also, if you've got photographs, an interesting case we had on procuring Israel passport with Misrad Hapanim, the people issuing passports in Israel, the Israel passport at the end. You need to make sure that there has been several sets of photographs, because when you get them, for some reason, they don't seem to like the one that's on your previous passport. However, be that as it may, we'll leave you there, and we'll come back with some views from Israel.
If you are a Christian, then there is no question that you owe a great debt to the Jewish people. Unto them were entrusted the oracles of God. What does that mean? It means, if not for the faithfulness of the Jewish people, we would not have this. And therefore you would not know your God, and you would not know his Son.
Israel and the Jewish people are under attack right now, and we owe them everything. The least that we can do is support them in their hour of need. So please go to EzraInternational.org and give to the Emergency Relief Fund, and your dollars will be used to help displaced and traumatized Jewish people throughout the land.
And remember, if you do nothing, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jewish people from another place. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Please go to EzraInternational.org and give your best gift today.
Greetings and welcome back to News and Views from the Heart of Israel. So, let's look at what people down in Israel, what they're looking forward to. Well, I think it goes without saying that the first thing that they are looking forward to is peace and prosperity. But then again, isn't that always the desire of all people in all times? Not an unreasonable thing at all, is it? The religious Zionists are looking forward to the expansion of the land. And in the Western press, media, they talk about settlers. And settlers are always portrayed as villains who are dispossessing these rightful Palestinians from places who've got no historical contact with historically at all, or any marked ownership for a long time. But the other thing, of course, is that all these areas are autonomous. I mean, there is no state of Palestine, there is no state of the Palestinian Authority, there is no state of Gaza. Anyway, these so-called settlers are religious Zionists, and they just want to settle the land that was given to them under the covenant and also under the UN, who seem to have decided, firstly, that they didn't, and secondly, behaved it as if they regretted it since day one. So we've got people who just want a bit of peace and quiet, those that want peace and prosperity. There's still quite an agricultural movement in Eretz Israel from the Halutzim, from the pioneers, and we've also, well, not all seen, but those of us that have been there, have seen the fulfillment of that prophecy of the desert blooming like a rose in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah. We've seen it. We've also driven down roads where the Israel side is verdant, and the Arab Islamic side is a desert. It speaks for itself. We've spoken about this before. So the pioneering movement, the agricultural movement is still flourishing. And they're really hoping to reclaim more land, improve their stocks of animals, improve the stocks of fruits, grains, and all kinds of other cereals, all kinds of other farming that are involved in the agricultural movement, moving hard and fast. Medicine, oh my word, isn't medicine doing well? Just had the unfortunate incident of my beloved daughter-in-law being rushed into hospital with an evil report, shall we say, and being referred to oncology. She couldn't have been in a better place at the time. Through God's grace and mercy, at this moment, all is well. Israel pioneers. The medical facilities in Israel pioneering What are they doing? Hoping, working hard. The agriculturists hoping, working hard. The scientists, my word, Israel science, Israel technology, looking to the future and working hard. If you were to ask me personally my own experiences of Israel for all these years, that to me has been what's typified Israel. Firstly, hope. Didn't Jeremiah say? These plans were not for evil, but for good, to give a hope and a future. And you can see this taking place with the agriculturists, with religious scientists, with the medical profession, with technology, with science, and also with military and defence applications. A hope, a future, working hard for it, and of course, rejoicing in all of it. So I'd just like to spend the last few minutes on, well, it's a bit of a novel thing, or is it? I'll leave it to you to decide. I'd just like to read you a scripture from Jeremiah, verses 14 through 18. Jeremiah is an interesting prophet, isn't he? I don't suppose you should have a favourite prophet, should you really? I think, I can't make my mind up. I kind of like Ezekiel because it's very dramatic, isn't it? And very colourful. You know, we've got Ezekiel laying siege to a city, you know, this kind of thing. And all these lovely visions he has and everything. But Jeremiah has got a certain pathos, hasn't it? Isaiah's kind of very eschatological, isn't it? And very dynamic. But Jeremiah has got a certain pathos about it. Of course, Jeremiah also is credited with the composition of Sinah, or Lamentations, as we call it. I always found it amazing, sitting there in the ruins, probably smoking ruins of Jerusalem. Jeremiah could still say, "Great is your faithfulness, O Lord." That's quite something, isn't it? Jeremiah unfortunately met a very nasty end, but the words he spoke have a great pathos and a phenomenal emotion. I'd just like to read you this. And this is what the Orthodox are working hard for. This is what the Orthodox are going to hope for. This is what the Orthodox are hoping in the future for. And it'll come to you when I read the verse. Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord. It's interesting, this word, behold, isn't it? It doesn't say look at this. It doesn't say observe it. Behold. I mean, you don't look at a sunset, do you? You behold it. When it says behold, this is in Hebraic way of saying something awesome is coming. Something awesome. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill the good word which I have spoken concerning the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Interesting. Both houses. Okay. In those days and at that time, I will cause a righteous branch of David to spring forth, and he shall execute justice and righteousness on the earth. In those days, Yehudah shall be saved. Jerusalem shall dwell in safety. And this is the name by which she shall be called. The Lord is our righteousness. For thus says the Lord, David shall never lack a man to sit on the throne of the house of Israel, and the Levitical priest shall never lack a man before me to offer burnt offerings, to burn grain offerings, and to prepare sacrifices continually. So, what does this mean? Well, the passage very clearly speaks about the Messianic age when all Israel will find salvation and also, obviously, be restored to the land of Israel. when it says all Israel shall be saved, it doesn't mean every single Jewish person or descendant of a Jewish person will be saved. It says all Israel. Israel is only Israel when it is Israel, when it defines itself as so. At that time, tells us a righteous descendant of David, Messiah, will sit on the throne in Jerusalem, and the temple will stand again, complete with its Levitical priesthood. So that does imply, if the Levitical priesthood is going to be there, there's going to be the whole gamut, isn't there? The whole cultus is going to be restored physically in the sensible world. We're not speaking about an eschatological temple here. How can we be? So, who holds this hope? Who holds the hope that this physical temple will be built in the sensible world? Who believes and wants a Messiah to be enthroned in Jerusalem and a physical temple? A complete reversal of AD 70 and AD 32 possibly as well. Well, I don't really know this, it might come as a surprise to you, but since 1987, the temple movement, sometimes known as the Temple Faithful, have begun preparations for the rebuilding of the Third Temple. Efforts to see this become a reality in the 21st century have been slowly progressing. Well, what in Israel? What do the people there think of this idea? Not a lot. Because the majority of Israelis actually are Chilonim, non-religious Jewish people. And the bulk of Jewish people in the diaspora were in the diaspora because they don't want to be in Zion or in Israel. So it's a bit of irrelevance to them. And it's also said by the head of the Temple Faithful, this will only be corrected when the Jewish people stop having a diaspora attitude. So, the importance of Orthodox Jews is that the rebuilding of the temple is part of the redemption world. Now, Gershom Salomon is director of the Temple Mount Faithful, an organisation that's preparing Israel society for this rebuilding act. So, how are they getting on? How are they getting on? Interesting, isn't it? Because the Shekinah and God's presence can't dwell in Jerusalem until the temple's there. So let's get ready for it, okay? So the first thing to do is to determine that the site should be where it is. Unfortunately, it's on the Temple Mount, and the women in black, these Muslim women, keep a constant vigil around the site where the temple is assumed to be there to interfere and also to stop Jewish prayer, which incidentally is banned in that area by Israeli law, sadly enough. However, in 1972 there was an earthquake, and it was found exactly and documented properly where, in fact, it stood. So how are they getting on other than that? Well, they've really started off. They've convened a Sanhedrin. They started breeding the red heifer. And if you go to Shiloh, there's a particular farmer that's been working on this for a long time. They took some red cattle from North America and crossbred it with some local cows, so you get this red heifer. Rather interesting, though, because during the first and the second temples of 1,000 years, only 9 red heifers were actually sacrificed in preparing various sacrifices that were needed. So Red Angus cattle, now they can't breed one outside of Israel because the red heifer can't be transported to Israel because it's designated it must never, ever have worn a yoke. In addition, we've managed to find and refine and breed red worms for the red dye that's needed for the priests' garments. That wasn't available before. So they've got that there. The training program for cottoning for priests and Levites is underway. A temporary altar has been built, collapsible, so it can be moved immediately should the opportunity arise by divine intervention, so they can set up immediately on Mount Moriah. Many of the vessels have been made, and the gold menorah, I don't know whether it's finished, but the prototype of it certainly has been around for a good number of years. So, the temple faithful are getting ready. The red heifer's just about there. The artifacts, well on the way. The Sanhedrin's been convened. The priests and Levites are being trained. So, even the Orthodox, we've got a hope and a future, and enthusiasm, and a very advanced work ethic. I'll leave that with you till we meet again for more news and views from the heart of Israel. God be with you until we meet again.